September 2019. The lingering heat of late summer still clung to the southern provinces. Lon, a young female corporal in the People's Army, had just received an unexpected transfer order. She was assigned to Quan Khu 9 for intensive training, preparing for an upcoming joint competition at the Truong Da Song in Hanoi. The directive arrived swiftly. Her departure was set at dawn. Lon was no stranger to travel. Army life meant constant relocations, but this time felt different. She felt a vague unease gnawing at her gut, a weighty intuition that something intangible awaited. At 5 a.m. on a humid morning, she slung her rucksack over her shoulder, pressed her uniform collar into shape, and boarded a military transport heading toward the Tsai Rang district. By noon, she arrived at her new billet, a simple two-story barracks housing for female soldiers. The building was tall and spare, the corridors echoey, the windows letting in scorching midday light. She and 6 other female soldiers would share a communal dorm room, 8 bunks squeezed into a rectangular space. The assigned group was a motley array of personalities, some brash, others timid, yet all disciplined by Army regimen. Lon, being the last arrival that day, introduced herself to stony faces softened by polite curiosity. Over the next week, everything seemed stable. The group trained, ate, and bantered, forging basic camaraderie. But soon, an unexpected newcomer arrived, forcing rearrangements in the sleeping arrangements. Lin, a tomboyish private, offered to share Lan's bunk so the new arrival could have Lin's bed. That small shift in who slept where would prove to be the first domino in a chain of eerie events. On the first night Lin bunked with Lon, nothing unusual occurred. But by morning, Lin confided to Lon that she'd had a disturbing dream, one so vivid it felt more than a dream. Lin described a short, shadowy figure of a man. She couldn't see the face, only a silhouette dark as ink. In the vision, he stood at the foot of her bunk, raising a hand as if pointing a finger at her. Lin had mumbled, "Aive? Who are you?" But the figure remained silent and unmoving. She woke in a cold sweat. Lon listened quietly, half believing it was just nerves from training. Life in the army was harsh. Nightmares were not rare. She patted Lin's shoulder and suggested, "Might be stress. We do a lot of drills. Don't worry." The others in the room teased Lin for being paranoid, turning every shadow into a ghost. Still, the next night Lin again shared a bunk with Lon, and once again, she awoke in terror. This time, the same black silhouette grabbed her ankles, physically yanking her foot until she bolted upright. Lin swore the silhouette hissed at her in a low whisper, "Leave, this space is mine." She retreated from the bed altogether, grabbing a pillow and scurrying to a vacant bunk away from Lon. A hush fell over the female dorm. They had only been training for about 2 weeks, yet each day, tensions grew. Lin's story about a black specter overshadowing the bunk near Lon was enough to raise eyebrows. But no one wanted to believe it was real. Possibly it was Lin's imagination? However, over the days that followed, Lon began sensing inexplicable chills late at night. She occasionally glimpsed a subtle flicker of motion near the foot of her bunk. Always fleeting, never solid enough to confirm. She shrugged it off, focusing on daily drills. But a nagging sense of being watched dogged her. If Lin was spooked, perhaps there really was something lurking. Could it be a ghost? Lan's routine was grueling. Up by 4:30 a.m., physical warm-ups, then specialized training in infiltration, obstacle courses, weapons drills, etc. She had little time to fret about ghost stories. After returning in the evening, she was exhausted. The occasional pang of dread lingered, but she chalked it up to fatigue. Meanwhile, Lin, who switched bunks, no longer had nightmares. The presumed phenomenon, if any, seemed to revolve around Lan's sleeping spot. One Saturday, the entire platoon was given a partial day off. Lan's phone buzzed. An old friend, Min, from the same competition squad, invited her to watch a local film screening at a small makeshift Rap Chiu Phim movie area on base. She accepted, seeing an opportunity for fun. They had been lightly flirting for months, but never found a moment to connect. That evening, they settled into the makeshift theater. The film was a comedic war drama. The crowd was lively, but Lon felt strangely hot, as if her body had caught fire. She fidgeted, her uniform clung uncomfortably, perspiration rolling down her back. She mentally cursed the lack of air conditioning, but no one else seemed half as bothered. She left the screening early, apologizing to Min and retreating to her billet with an unshakable sense of feverish restlessness. That night, a bizarre incident befell her. She lay in bed, half lucid, dozing fitfully. Then came the distinct sensation of a presence right by her pillow. She parted her eyes, and saw it, the black silhouette. This time, not at the foot of the bunk, but looming near her head. She tried to scramble away, but her muscles felt paralyzed. Her breath quickened, heart pounding. She wanted to shout, but no voice emerged. The figure slowly lifted the blanket's edge, as if preparing to climb under it. An unholy wave of panic overwhelmed Lon. She felt the mattress dip, an indentation forming next to her as though someone lay down. Then it slid an arm around her, a weight on her waist. She could almost sense breath near her ear. The shape nuzzled her hair, exhaling a breathy moan. In her mind, she screamed stop, but no sound escaped. Every nerve in her body was on red alert. This was horrifyingly intimate, like a phantom lover's embrace. Time froze. She drifted in that state for what felt like minutes or hours, uncertain. When at last her body jerked free from the paralysis, she jolted upright, panting. The bunk was empty. The dorm's overhead lamp was off, but a corridor light cast faint illumination. No black figure, no footprints, just the echo of dread. She glimpsed her phone. 2:14 a.m. Was that a dream? A half-lucid night terror? But the memory felt too real. Her skin still tingled from ghostly contact. Impossible, must be stress. She tried to calm down, eventually dozed again. But she dreamt of a faceless man, pressing close, murmuring nonsense. She snapped awake at dawn, feeling drained. That day, the same sense of overheated annoyance seeped into her interactions. She found herself snapping at Min over trivial things, feeling inexplicably irritated. 3 months of training concluded, and Lon was granted leave to return home for a short spell. She had parted ways with the competition group earlier than expected. Some interpersonal friction had arisen, partially from her constant irritability. Even with Min, she bickered for no reason. Feeling relieved to go home, Lon hopped on a bus to her rural hometown. Reaching home, she was greeted with warm tears by her mother, Ko Hoa, an older lady with a knack for spiritual sensitivities. She noticed at once how haggard Lon looked. "Con oi, you're so pale," she exclaimed. "What's wrong? You're not eating enough." Lon just shrugged, wanting to avoid talk about nightmares. But after a day or two, she confided about the strange nightly episodes, an unseen presence that felt like a man climbing into bed with her. Ko Hoa's eyes widened. Being devout, she suspected a Duyên Am scenario, where a wandering male spirit forcibly chooses a living woman as his bride. She asked Lon, "Any chance you offended a spirit or visited a haunted place?" Lon was skeptical. She considered telling the story about the silhouette, but hesitated. Her mother might overreact. In the end, Lon gave a half-truth version. Ko Hoa insisted they visit a local temple or spirit medium. "We can't let that linger." But to Lan's surprise, an inexplicable wave of defiance overcame her. She refused, claiming she was too tired. Oddly, every time her mother suggested going to a shrine, Lan's chest burned with discomfort, as though suffocated by unseen hands. The following days at home, Lan's mood worsened. She picked fights with her mother for silly reasons, not serving food quickly enough, or letting the neighbor's dog bark. Meanwhile, she devoured huge plates of meat with an eagerness that left her mother uneasy. Lon had never had such a ravenous appetite. Usually, she ate in moderation, but now she was unstoppable. She also found fish sauce repugnant, which was bizarre because Lon typically loved it. She only wanted certain pungent dishes, heavily salted, or heavily spiced. One morning, Mother noticed something else. Around 6 p.m. each day dusk, Lan's complexion turned oddly yellowish, her eyes a faint red. By 9 p.m., the transformation was stronger. Her face was flushed, eyes glowed with unsettling intensity. Ko Hoa sometimes entered Lan's room to see her lying stiffly, staring at the ceiling, half-lips parted as though listening to silent conversation. In the second week at home, the mother's concerns peaked. She insisted on taking Lon to the clinic for a full checkup. The doctors found nothing physically wrong, vitals normal, blood tests normal. Yet Lan's mental state was fragile, and she had episodes of intense heat in her body around nightfall. The staff declared it psychological stress. They suggested rest or counseling. But each evening, strange phenomena returned. The oppressive sense of a man's presence in bed with Lon, intangible yet intimate. She'd awaken, feeling hands slip away from her body, or a weight lifting from the mattress. She would see a flicker of a black silhouette by the window. She tried to scream, but her voice caught in her throat. By the time she forced her limbs to move, it was gone. Ko Hoa resolved that if medicine gave no answers, they must try the spiritual route. She began confiding in a neighbor who recommended a certain Bathe, female spirit medium or fortune teller, rumored to be skilled in unraveling curses. Lon, though uneasy, felt she had no better option. So mother and daughter set off to see this Bathe, located in a cramped, unassuming house behind a row of banana trees. Upon arriving, the medium's assistant told them that Bathe was busy, many clients in queue. They waited, noticing the house's interior was jam-packed with altars, incenses, statues of various deities. Old paper amulets hung from the rafters. Hours passed. But each time it was nearly their turn, the medium would glance at Lon and say, "I can't see you now. Come back another day." This repeated twice, which frustrated Ko Hoa. She demanded an explanation. "Why do you keep refusing?" The medium only replied cryptically, "I sense a strong presence overshadowing her. Not yet time." Finally, on a third attempt, the medium relented, ushering them into a side room. "I'll try to help, but this is complex," she muttered. She set out a deck of mystical cards. She had Lon shuffle them, then arranged them in 9 piles. The medium studied them, her face grim. She declared, "There is a male spirit bound to you. Not an ancestor, not a familial ghost, someone else. He calls himself your husband in the astral realm." The mother gasped, while Lan's skin prickled with goosebumps. The medium continued, "He found you in a moment of vulnerability. Or perhaps he just took a liking to your aura. He wants to claim you as his bride. Possibly this is your Duyên Am." She also revealed that the entity tried interfering with Lan's everyday life, preventing her from forming real relationships with living men. That explained her constant fights with Min. The mother pressed, "Can you remove him?" The medium shook her head. "I can do only so much. My power is limited. This is not a simple curse. He's chosen her. Only certain solutions might sever the bond." She gave Lon 3 protective talismans, instructing her to burn them into coconut water and drink 1 each day for 3 days. Try not to speak of this to others. The spirit might retaliate if it feels threatened. Then go see a specialized shaman from another province, if you wish a thorough exorcism. I can't guarantee success, but attempt it. Taking the talismans home, Lon followed instructions. She felt slightly better for a week. The nightmares lessened, though not fully gone. However, each evening, a large black moth fluttered in from nowhere, swirling around her house. At times it perched near the ancestor altar or outside Lan's bedroom door. Spooked, she chased it away. But it kept returning. The mother began to suspect it was the spirit in disguise, peering in, searching for an opening. 2 weeks later, Lan's health plummeted again. She grew paler, circles under her eyes. She struggled to maintain the minimal regimen of daily exercise, complaining of chest pains. At dinner, she'd slump half asleep. The mother feared the spirit was draining Lan's vitality. In desperation, they sought multiple fortune tellers, mediums, and local healers. Some claimed Lon was cursed or Vong Theo. Others stated that it was simply a partial possession. He doesn't want to harm her, he just wants a spiritual union. She heard conflicting advice. Offer him a symbolic wedding ceremony to placate him. Undergo a formal exorcism with a specialized Khmer sorcerer. Make a vow at a major temple so that the spirit cannot approach. Nothing worked fully. Each attempt either gave short relief or angered the spirit, triggering worse nightmares. The black silhouette appeared in uniform with a baby cradled in his arms, whispering that it was their child. Some nights, Lon dreamt of romantic scenes, strolling hand in hand with a faceless man through moonlit fields. She woke confused, a mixture of attraction and terror. The mother watched with heartbreak. One day, an older cousin visited and shared a rumor. Sometimes, Duyên Am befalls a woman who unknowingly gave a spirit permission. Maybe an item of yours was thrown into a river, or you once had a close brush with death in the water, and the spirit latched on. That triggered Lan's memory of an incident from her teenage years. She once nearly drowned while crossing a river on a half-submerged footpath. She tripped, sank, coughed water. Miraculously rescued by a passing fisherman. She never considered it significant beyond a typical near-drowning. But could that have sown the seeds for an otherworldly tie? The cousin suggested a bold approach. Go to a specialized Khmer temple or a shaman. They excel in dissolving such attachments. Intrigued, the mother and daughter found a name, Chu Ti, a rumored Khmer sorcerer living about 2 hours away. They made the journey early one morning. Chu Ti's house was modest but adorned with bright saffron cloth and ritual paraphernalia. Chicken bones, dried herbs, and old stone relics lay about. As soon as they arrived, the sorcerer's face grew serious. He beckoned them in silence toward a small courtyard, telling them to wait. Then he approached Lon, grasped her wrist, feeling her pulse. He muttered, "This presence overshadowing you is fierce. He claims you wholeheartedly. We must do a deeper ceremony." He lit incense, motioned for her to sit on a mat. A short incantation later, the sorcerer blew smoke across Lan's shoulders. She felt a scorching heat pulse down her spine. The sorcerer turned to the mother. "Your child has big protective spirits from her ancestors, but also an intrusive male ghost. He clings from an old watery encounter, like a near drowning. Possibly that was the moment he recognized her as a suitable partner in the spirit realm." The mother pleaded, "Please, help us break it." The sorcerer nodded and said, "I can attempt a separation ritual. But if this entity is deeply in love or obsessed, it can be stubborn. Are you certain you want him gone, no matter the consequence?" Lon, trembling, yes, she wanted freedom. She dreaded losing any chance at normal love. The sorcerer prepared a small clay figurine, wrote Lan's name on a slip of paper, stuffed it into the figurine, and recited a chanting. He next commanded Lon to stand barefoot on a circle drawn in chalk. As the ritual progressed, Lan's head pounded. She felt an overwhelming sense of sadness that wasn't hers. She heard a voice inside her mind, "Don't cast me out. I love you." Overcome by panic, she started to cry, though she didn't fully understand why. Suddenly, the figurine cracked. The sorcerer cursed under his breath. "He's resisting," he told them. Then, to the mother's horror, Lon collapsed, moaning in a low voice. The sorcerer flung a handful of powder onto Lan's hair, chanting faster. For a moment, Lan's eyes rolled back, and she gave a rattling cough. Everyone froze. But she didn't speak in that ghostly voice. Instead, she gradually fainted. The sorcerer declared the entity had retreated, for now. He gave them a new protective amulet, a small carved pendant shaped like a serpent coiled around a sword. Lon must wear this day and night. That spirit, if persistent, might attempt to reclaim her. This amulet repels him. He also recommended weekly prayers at a temple for at least a month, to strengthen her aura. They left, somewhat hopeful. For the next few weeks, Lon complied. She wore the amulet, recited prayers, avoided solitary nights. The black silhouette no longer appeared in her bed. She regained some energy. She called Min to apologize for her earlier foul moods, hoping to rekindle a normal relationship. He was cautious, but agreed to meet. Just when Lon thought her life was returning to normal, the entity struck back. Late one evening, she removed the amulet briefly to wash her hair. Distracted, she forgot to put it on. That night, the presence returned with terrifying force. She first felt a subtle shift in the air. Then a crushing weight pinned her arms. She saw the silhouette's dark face close to hers. Through the haze, it whispered, "You're mine. No amulet can keep me away forever." She tried to scream, but only whimpers emerged. She felt cold lips press against her neck. The sense of violation was overwhelming, as if intangible limbs claimed her in a mockery of intimacy. Her mother heard muffled noises and rushed to check. The door, locked from inside, wouldn't budge. She heard Lan's strangled cry. Panicking, the mother banged on the door, hollering for neighbors. After moments of desperate fumbling, they forced the door open. The sight that greeted them was horrifying. Lon lay twisted on the bed, eyes wide with tears, a swirl of cold air enveloping her, hair swirling as if in a faint wind. Then it abruptly stilled, leaving Lon trembling. Between sobs, Lon recounted the spirit's assault. The mother realized Lon wasn't wearing the amulet. Furious at the oversight, the mother rummaged through the hamper, found it, and clasped it back around Lan's neck, cursing the entity for its cruelty. Lon decided, no more half measures. She must fully sever this tie once and for all. She told her mother, "I'll do whatever it takes. I can't live like this." They sought out another spiritual figure rumored to handle especially stubborn Duyên cases, an elderly female exorcist known as Batan. She was said to be picky about which clients to accept. Some said she was once a devout Buddhist nun. Others said she was trained in an older, deeper tradition. In any case, she had a fearsome reputation. Arranging an audience proved challenging. But eventually, Batan agreed to help, after hearing of the spirit's aggression. She demanded, "Bring me a prepared offering, vegetarian food, paper effigies, both male and female, and a symbolic baby. Also, a set of your personal clothing for each item, plus 49 white lilies. We'll do a spirit wedding to pacify him, then burn it so he can depart to the afterlife." Lon was bewildered by the concept, a wedding ceremony with a ghost? But Batan insisted it was sometimes the only path. Let the spirit marry a symbolic stand-in, so it no longer tries to claim the living body. Then, in a final ritual, they would immolate the entire offering, effectively sending the spirit away. "He'll have to be satisfied with the paper bride, leaving you free," Batan explained. "But be warned, some spirits resist even that." Come dawn on the designated day, mother and daughter arrived at Batan's remote dwelling near an old orchard. The materials were laid out, a miniature altar with paper figurines, small wedding garments drawn in bright inks, a paper cradle with a paper baby. They placed Lan's name on one figurine, the spirit's presumed name, left blank, or just Nam Vong male ghost on the other. The exorcist performed incantations for nearly an hour. Lon felt pulses of stabbing pain in her temples. The exorcist demanded the spirit's presence. The candles flickered violently. Then, a chilling wind swept the orchard. Lon doubled over, retching. The exorcist commanded, "Spirit, your bride is here in paper form. Accept this union and depart from the living woman." Lightning cracked overhead, though the skies were fairly clear. The mother watched in awe. At the ritual's climax, Batan used a special dagger to slice the air around Lan's silhouette, chanting words to cut the bond. Then she lit the paper effigies on fire, along with the paper baby, letting them burn to ash. The exorcist flung handfuls of salt, chanting, "Go in peace, never return." Lon collapsed again, body trembling. For a final moment, she glimpsed the black silhouette at the edge of her vision. Its posture was forlorn, seeming to stare at her as if in heartbreak. Then it faded, carried away in swirling smoke. When Lon woke, she found the orchard quiet. Batan and her mother hovered, concern etched into their faces. The exorcist offered a small pot of herbal decoction. "Drink. Cleanse the internal negativity." Lon obeyed, wincing at its bitter taste. Batan declared the ceremony successful, but cautioned them that if Lon ever neglected her spiritual well-being or performed disrespectful acts near watery places, the spirit could re-emerge or some other entity might slip in. She recommended monthly offerings at a temple, wearing a protective charm for at least a year, and never going near certain haunted rivers alone. Over the ensuing weeks, Lon found the nights mercifully free from nightmares. No silhouette hovered at her bed. She felt calmer, her old energy returning. She reconnected with Min, apologized for the unexplained hostility. They tentatively resumed friendship, possibly edging toward romance again. Meanwhile, the mother thanked heaven that her daughter was safe, vowing to remain vigilant. One day, Lon tested her new freedom. A friend invited her to an evening out with a group at a local off-base restaurant. She accepted. At about 9 p.m., a wave of heat used to plague her, but now it didn't come. She managed to enjoy the gathering without the mysterious flush or restlessness. She realized, that presence used to sabotage my social life. Freed, she felt joy. Late that night, returning alone, she paused at the base gate, gazing at the stars. She quietly prayed, "If you truly are gone, I hope you find peace somewhere else." No odd wind answered. No sense of invisible arms enfolding her. Relief settled in her chest. She exhaled a long-held breath, stepping forward into her new, unbound life. Upon rejoining the Quan Ku 9 environment, some people noticed Lon no longer snapped at them. They teased that maybe her mood improved because she was in love. Lon let them believe whatever. She no longer had to explain about the nightmares or the Duyên. She quietly thrived in training again. Her performance soared. The commanding officer recognized her regained discipline. She also saw Lin sometimes, who would grin and say, "No more weird shadows around your bunk, huh?" They both laughed. In hushed circles, rumors spread that Lon had endured some curse. But official army culture rarely acknowledges such superstition publicly. Nonetheless, a handful of female soldiers asked for details, curious if they too might encounter similar phenomena. Lon only offered general caution: don't provoke the unknown. And if something latches on, seek help fast. At home, the mother remained watchful. She offered incense on certain days, prayed for the unknown spirit that once haunted her daughter. The black moth never returned. The watery illusions or illusions of a baby vanished from Lan's dreams. She started sleeping deeply, untroubled, waking energized. Once, she had a fleeting dream of a man in black standing at the edge of an old footbridge by a river, waving farewell. No malice, just a quiet goodbye. She awakened tearful, not from fear but from a sense of closure. Perhaps that was the final farewell from the spirit. Min tentatively approached Lon about resuming their relationship in earnest. She apologized for her abrupt mood swings, vaguely citing personal spiritual trouble. He, though not a believer in ghosts, respected her sincerity. Gradually, they found a comfortable rhythm. One weekend, they strolled around a lakeside near the base. Under the golden afternoon sun, Lon felt a twinge of old memory, the times the silhouette had forcibly overshadowed her love life. Now the sunlight felt so real, so warm. She squeezed Min's hand, silently thanking the universe that she reclaimed her freedom. Min teased, "You're always half lost in thought." She smiled, deciding no ghost would overshadow her future again. Months turned to a year. Lon soared through the next set of training regimens, eventually representing her unit in a major nationwide sports and tactics competition. She gained small accolades, forging a bright career path, no longer weighed down by nightly horrors. Still, she did not forget. One's life can brush the supernatural, and not always by choice. The Duyên experience taught her humility, that some corners of existence defy logic. She rarely recounted the ordeal except to close friends, warning them about trifling with spiritual realms. At times, she wondered if that spirit had truly been a lost soul, lonely in the afterlife, or if it was a more demonic parasite. She realized it scarcely mattered. She overcame it, partly due to her mother's unwavering support, the medium's partial help, and ultimately Baton's final ceremony. Possibly, her own steeled will and protective ancestral spirits were crucial as well. In a quiet moment, she wrote a letter to herself, something like, "I was once imprisoned by an unseen fiancé, a shadow man, who latched onto me from an unknown watery crossing. Let me never forget that the living must mind the boundaries with the departed. But let me also remember to approach the unknown with compassion, not only fear. May that wandering soul find rest." She sealed the letter away in her footlocker, never reading it again but feeling a sense of catharsis. The incident with the Duyên took on a life of its own among the local soldier community. Some whispered that Lon was married to a ghost. Others claimed she performed a secret childbearing ritual. Most didn't know the real story, but the fragments of gossip lent a mystique to her name. Occasionally, a new female recruit might approach her shyly, asking if the rumors were true. Lon, firm yet gentle, would disclaim, "Don't dwell on nonsense. Keep your spirit strong, follow discipline, and you'll be fine." If pressed further, she only shook her head, a subtle smile acknowledging truths she wouldn't publicly share. In the 2 years since the last ceremony, no sign of the black silhouette re-emerged. Lon fully resumed normal soldier life, her bunk unremarkable, no midnight invasions. She continued to wear a small protective bracelet given by Baton, just in case. Now and then, she reread an old text message from Lin. "Still can't believe that Shadow singled you out. Glad you're free now. Next time we meet, let's share a beer and laugh about it." Indeed, Lon often smiles, remembering how it all began with Lin's nightmares, and escalated into Lan's personal haunting. She overcame it, forging her own destiny. Hence the moral: even in the structured environment of the military, the supernatural can creep in unnoticed, forging intangible bonds. But with determination, family love, and the right spiritual guidance, one can break free from even the darkest attachments.